Hey everyone, and welcome to the Let's Do More show. I'm Chris Rufflin, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is all about powerful personal stories of resilience, recovery, and overcoming life's toughest challenges. Here we dive deep into real life experiences on perseverance and personal growth. We'll explore what it takes to develop a positive mindset and how to transform adversity into strength. Along the way, I'll be sitting down with inspiring individuals, including celebrities in recovery, to help break the stigma of addiction, talk about mental health, and provide hope to those who need it most. Let's Do More. It's about finding hope in the dark moments, surviving the unsurvivable, and learning how to manifest the life you desire. We'll uncover insights and lessons that not only help us push through life's toughest times, but also turn those experiences into a force for good in our communities. So whether you're looking for motivation, healing, or just a reminder that you're not alone, you're in the right place. Let's do more. Hello, welcome to the Let's Do More podcast. My name is Chris Rufflin, and I'm the co-creator of Let's Do More. I'm really excited to have a good friend of mine on the call here today, remotely from a warm area, because we have snow here in Utah. And I just want to say, this show is really about overcoming challenges and obstacles, and how do we get through the hardest moments in life? And a lot of you know that I'm a person in recovery from addiction, and this show is based around that, is based on giving hope to those that have not yet found recovery, and also supporting those that have. So if you know somebody, if you have a friend or family member who's struggling with addiction, or if you yourself are, and you're looking for a way out and some resources and help, always feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at letsdomore.life. That is the @ symbol, letsdomore.life. And we'll have many more episodes to come. I'm really excited for the show today. And the individual I've got on the show today is a friend of mine, Suze. We actually met in a program as far as getting sober. And, for Suze, this is her first round going through this. I love her energy. She's becoming a great friend. And I'm really grateful you were willing, Suze, to, jump on the show today and be vulnerable, right? Like, we're putting ourselves out there. Who knows who's going to see this?
That's right.
And, I think, there's this stigma around addiction, which we'll talk about more, where people hide it, right? And, my personal belief, and I've developed this through many years in sobriety and having my challenges and setbacks and coming back and things like that, is that people are afraid to talk about their addiction, right? They're afraid to talk about that. And many of them are afraid to talk about their recovery. In fact, there's 27 million people in the United States that are in recovery. However, there's only about 3 or 4 million that would ever, talk to other people about it. And my personal belief is that the only thing we do by being silent in our addiction is we literally cost people their lives, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
We've been in the hell, we've been in the flames, and I think it's our personal obligation and something we get to do to go back into those flames and carry someone else out of the fire.
Yeah. I love how you said I get to do. That's great.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything in recovery for me changed the day that I decided that, all these things that I do to stay sober and to stay centered and, help one other addict or alcoholic to another. These are all things I really get to do, right? Like today, we get to be on this show, and who knows how many people are out driving around the streets around us and behind us, and they'll never, ever get a chance to self-reflect like those of us in recovery do. They'll never get a chance, some of those people will never get a chance to even know about what it's like to get sober and have that opportunity. So, really excited to have you here and be vulnerable. So let's start off, we're going to kind of just see where the conversation goes, but let's start off with, share with me a little bit about your background and what led you to seek recovery? Because I know this is your first time around, and you've got that awesome energy of just amazement about life sober. I know that you were active in your addiction and alcoholism for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So tell me just a little bit of a snippet of about your background, and take a couple minutes and share with us also what led for you to seek recovery.
All right. Well, I am happy to talk about that. So what first started me is, just through the years, I was in my younger years, I don't believe that I was one that had an issue at that time, right? I just enjoyed myself. And then as the years went on, I became a binge drinker. I could go weeks and weeks without drinking, but when I drank, right? It used to be a joke about how much my bar tabs were. That was a running joke between my friends and I. And then, during the time I dabbled in freebasing. That was a thing for me that was in my early 20s. And then when I went clean off that, I found crank back in those days, right? And then crank turns into meth. And then I cleaned myself up from that. And then I found freebasing again. And I went through that for a few years. But during all of this time, I was always a pot smoker. I love the ganja, right? That was my go-to.
Same here. I get it.
Yeah, right. My other addiction also is food, right? I am a food addict. I am a compulsive overeater. That is something also that I'm working on. But then, so I had, through the years, right, I had some sexual trauma in my past that had led me to be morbidly obese. That was my layer of protection. That in turn led me to, in 2022, I got weight loss surgery. I went for a year without drinking. I went for a year without eating carbs. I went for a year, but let me tell you, I was smoking like a chimney. Smoking. After that year, so I went for a year. And after that year, I planned this big to do that my year was up, right? I could now have a drink. I planned to have 2 drinks at this gathering. I was puking my guts up. Puking because I think I had my 2 drinks within the first 5 minutes. During the course of the next 16 months after that, my relationship with alcohol completely changed. I was now suffering blackouts. My phone became my memory. Like, I would have to look at my phone the next morning to know what I had done that previous night. I was the one I started then sneaking drinks. I started then, well, it's 3:00. I'm at work. I'm going to be off soon. I can just have a quick drink,
Yeah.
and then it became
No quick
noon.
drink for
And
us, right?
yeah. A quick drink. Yeah. Yeah. That first drink does go down real quick. And then the
Yeah.
second one
Yeah.
is real quick.
Yep.
Yeah. But my relationship with alcohol just had completely changed. And I didn't realize this. I learned later while I was in recovery that 33% of weight loss surgery patients in the year 2 and 3 become alcohol dependent. That's something that they don't really
Interesting.
inform you, prior
Yeah.
to the surgery.
Right.
However, what led me to actually get help was during this 16 months of drinking like crazy. I used to be the life of the party. People used to enjoy being around me. And it got to the point to where it was, well, who's going to take care of Suze now? Who's going to take care of her at this thing, And I became that friend that had to be babysat, right? That friend that was kind of like, do we want to invite her? And that was, I'm 58 years old. I've never experienced that through my years. Everybody always wanted to invite me to the parties. They wanted me there. And it got to the point to where I wasn't really wanted to be there anymore,
And when did you, Suze, when did you take your first drug? When did you start?
I was introduced. I had my first drink when I was about 12, but then I didn't have it for a very long time after that. I had snuck a drink, tasted it, but then I had a neighbor introduce me to slow gin and orange juice drinks
Oh,
when
wow.
I
Yeah.
was about, yeah, right.
Uh,
And then I was introduced to marijuana when I was 14, when I was a freshman in high school.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
so from that point, from 14 on, just until, how long did this active addiction go on for you? How many years?
My active addiction. So from 14, I was a party smoker. I was doing everything. And then in my 20s is when I became a daily smoker. Like, I don't believe I went a day without smoking marijuana since then, since my early 20s. So, and I am 58 years old now.
Wow. Yeah. So, I think people, like you said, have a stigma around this. What do you think about, so one of the common conversations I hear out there with people is, especially with legalization of cannabis, right? I remember how upset I was to hear about, because as a person with this disease, I was mad because there were so many other forms of cannabis I now couldn't use. So I think a lot of people understand that for somebody who has substance use disorder, abstinence for us is a key thing. You know,
Everything.
it's not what we want. It's what we have to stay sober and to be able to actually live a full life. And we also have to have something to replace our addiction. We'll talk more about that. You know, what are your ideas? I mean, for people who say, because in my experience, we're different than normal people, right? Our brains
So
are
you,
wired different. Science backs that up. You know, once we take one little substance into our body, it seems that we can't think about anything else except for the next one, you know, the next drink, the next smoke, whatever it is. And I know a lot of people around us don't understand that. A lot of people in large, in this nation and others don't really understand. And they think that it's something we're doing to ourselves. And that while it is something we're doing to ourselves, it's not always a choice of like, hey, I'm going to go burn down my life, right? I'm going to go, use substances till I overdose, or I'm going to drink until I'm in the hospital. These are the side effects of what substance use disorder and addiction looks like. What do you think about that, though? What do you think about marijuana? It's legal. People say, well, it's not really a drug now. I mean, what's your experience? Because I think you have a powerful part of your story you can share with us on how that actually can become your entire life. I know
yeah.
when you quit, you had mentioned to me before that it was almost like losing a spouse in a way,
Yeah.
right?
I lost a lover. I
Yeah.
absolutely lost a lover. I mean, I bought a little shack, right? A shed that I would go outside and I decorated. That's where I would go smoke because when I moved into my newest place, I couldn't smoke in there. And the thought of not smoking, that was just not on the table.
Right.
And when I went into recovery, I had not smoking pot wasn't even on the table. It wasn't even a thought. That was just always going to be a part of my life. Suze I've just always been a stoner. I figured I would always be a stoner.
Sure.
I just enjoyed marijuana. And then when I was in recovery and my therapist, asked, we started talking about marijuana. And to me, there was not a single negative aspect of marijuana. It's a medicine. We use it medicinally
Right.
now. And
It's
he
from the
said,
earth.
so you
From
use
the
it
earth.
medicinally? And I went, no, but I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah. But you could now, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's, and I mean, it's just as powerful as anything else, as these
it
hard
is.
street drugs that people put a lot of judgment on. I had those same feelings and thoughts. I remember, marijuana is my drug of choice. It just always leads to other things. But it's been the one that was always my standby, right? It helped me make food taste better. It helped me be more creative. It helped me be more of the life of the party. It helped me, so I thought. And what it actually was, I was really in this bubble, right? This bubble and hell of, I'm trying to travel and I'm having to figure out how to either ship marijuana to the hotel I'm staying at or figure out how I'm going to use it on the plane. This was long before there were gummies and stuff that I could just take. It was a rare occasion to find those or edibles. And I mean, it seemed like to me it was just as captive of a life as when I got into a lot harder things,
Oh,
harder drugs and
absolutely.
drink.
Absolutely. It's just I don't know if the word is just a calmer captive,
Right. Yeah.
right? In my Coke days, which was just recently, I used to be a baser. And then right before I got sober, I was getting back into cocaine and I was doing lines. But marijuana was never not there. It didn't matter what drug I was doing, marijuana was always there. If I did shrooms, marijuana was there. Did I mix shrooms and cocaine? No, I did not. I believed one drug at a time, but marijuana didn't count as a drug.
You had principles. You had principles, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like we're
yeah.
gonna
Right.
go.
I wanted to enjoy the benefits of each drug I was doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know,
again,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And it's
But
funny, normal
again, I didn't
people,
count the marijuana as a drug.
yeah, I mean, normal people would say, I'm doing one drug at a time because, everything's in moderation. But for us, there is no such thing as
No,
moderation. I
no,
think at some
that's
point you
like on a
cross that
pill
line.
bottle. Take
Yeah.
as directed. That's
Right.
funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's a point too, Suze, where I want to get your input on this too, where there's a point in our life where we can really recognize that we crossed the line. You know, I didn't know I had addiction in my family. My father was an alcoholic, and I didn't know that my entire life. I had a grandmother, great grandmother that was, and the gene landed on me. And, a lot of people may not realize this is a hereditary thing for a lot of us. It is also something where if I continue to drink and use, I can also become I can become alcoholically involved, and I will do anything alcoholically in my life, right? But for you, when was the turning point of that moment when you realized that change was necessary, that you had to do something that, you know, looking to get sober, was it a consequence? Was it a thought process? Was it, I just don't like where my life is right now? I mean, some of us go down that rabbit hole pretty deep, but what did it look like for you?
Mine was, I had at least a little bit of common sense left. And I had an appointment with my therapist. And I was open with her about the night prior, because looking at my phone, I apparently had gotten just wasted. I was doing shots and then chasing them. My chaser was the 13% mixed drinks in a can, right? So I was doing, yeah. And
Yeah.
then, right. And then according to my text, I had called my dealer, and she came and picked me up and took me to another friend's house who didn't use, but I showed up there to visit. And then apparently I took an Uber home, about 3 a.m, and then was up for work the next day, and was just, I knew something had gone on, right? I felt it. I felt the wreck. I felt like a wreck. And so then when I found out exactly that everything that had taken place, I talked to my therapist, and she's the one that said, Suze, I think maybe you might want to check into recovery, check into a treatment center. And I'm all, what? What? Me? No, 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 and then she talked to me a little bit more about it, and that's what opened my eyes.
Yeah, it's funny how we're the last ones to know. I
Right?
remember thinking I was active in my addiction for 15 years before I found recovery, a lot of my adult life. Um, I started, when I was about 26, 27, it started with marijuana, and it went all the way till, 44 years old, with moments of sobriety in there and some good solid, moments of sobriety. Unfortunately, relapse is a part of my story. It's not a part of everyone's story. It doesn't have to be part of your story, but for me, it was. And, fortunately, I learned a lot of things, but, it's hard. I mean, we're the last ones to know. Everyone else around us sees it. I used to call myself a functioning addict. I'm an entrepreneur. I had different businesses throughout my life. I was managing people. I was doing things well. So I thought, yeah, at one point I remember thinking that marijuana was it was the reason I was successful. It was the reason I was creative. Without it, what was I going to do? You know? And my recovery, I'll share about maybe on another episode. I don't want to get all into it because it's more about you today. Mine ended as it always ends with my sobriety, with whether it's police or the first time I got sober, it ended with, 42 units, dogs, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. I go a little bit heavy when when I'm out there. And that's just where it led to for me. And, none of that is fun. None of that is fun. So when it comes to the addiction side of your story, I want to get more into recovery and what your thoughts are on that. How did it impact relationships, career, and personal goals? I mean, what did it do to your life looking back now? Because you were stuck in that for quite some time.
Yeah.
What did it
I
cause?
had always wanted to be, when I was younger, my dream was to either be a police officer or a school teacher. Always wanted that. I could not, in my mind, well, I couldn't be a cop because I smoke pot. I'm not going
Yeah,
to give up pot to be a cop. I mean, come on,
right.
right? I mean, why would I give that up? I always had to find jobs that didn't do drug testing, right? I mean, that was a big part of my story. And at the end, though, toward, that last 16 months is when I started lying to my friends. I started choosing alcohol over going out with my friends. I had plans with my best friend and let her know, well, it's raining outside, so I probably shouldn't make it over tonight. And she goes, really? Or could it be that you started drinking at 4 o'clock
Right. It's
today?
like, what was the truth there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy to me that we can look back on these things and it's sad. Like, it's a lot of lost relationships, a lot of lost opportunities, a lot of lost time,
Yeah.
which we'll never get back. And it's sad. And, the lying thing, if
Yeah.
anyone's listening to this podcast and you're stuck in your addiction and people are telling you you're lying or you became a liar, I like to consider myself a pretty honest person when I'm sober. When I'm
You should.
not, there's no truth coming out. And it's crazy to look back at. It's almost like, I guess the way I feel is it's almost like, you know, two different people in a way. In a lot of ways, actually, right?
Yeah.
And some of the
Turns us
best
into
people
somebody we're not.
some of the best people I know in my life today or that I've met that are just super inspirational are those that are in recovery. You hear these stories of someone going from being homeless and on the streets, Skid Row or Vegas or wherever, or even here in Utah, and going from the streets to where I've got several friends. One of them helps run a program for very many years, worked in the mayor's office actually, and now she runs some programs that help people get their record expunged. I have another handful of friends who've gone and got their masters in social work and decided to get on the ground and attack this disease where it is, and just kind of get their boots on the ground and go out there and help one person at a time. So one question I always like to address too is, before you got into recovery, what did you think about meetings and community? And there's obviously AA, and there's all kinds of 12-step programs out there. There's a lot of different modalities of recovery today, which is great, because I think people have to find their tribe. This is something we cannot do alone. It takes having people with similar thought processes and the same disease to really help us understand what we can do to get sober and stay sober. But what were some of your misconceptions about recovery? What did you believe at first when you heard this idea of getting sober? Like, what were you worried about?
The one thing I was worried about is I still have a home. I still have a job. I still, how can I need recovery if I'm not homeless and living on the streets because of alcohol, right? That's how I really looked at somebody who was to the point of needing to go to treatment.
Yeah, that makes
As
sense.
you said, somebody who was still functioning per se, right? If we want to look at it, I wasn't
We thought we were
functioning at
functioning.
my,
Yeah, I get it.
my full self. No, I was not. But yeah, that was my misperception about going in, is that I wasn't deep enough into it, right? My perception was you had to be deep and have lost everything to really consider getting treatment. Yeah, that was, and
Yeah, I
then,
agree. I agree.
yeah,
And this disease there's no discretion. There's no discrimination. It doesn't matter if you are someone like you that you thought you were functioning, you hadn't lost your home yet, or if you're the person that is homeless or the person that's died 1,000 times and continues to use and overdose.
we got the same disease.
And it doesn't matter. You might be the most famous, most important person in the world, a celebrity. You might be an important business owner. You might be a big leader in your community. Look, the disease of substance use disorder is the type of thing that it doesn't matter who you are. This isn't just reserved for the people who are irresponsible and aren't doing anything with their life. I think that's part of the stigma, because when we watch movies and we watch television and we watch these shows, sometimes AA is portrayed a little bit interesting, I will say.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I do a lot for my recovery. 12-step meetings is part of it for me. But,
Very much so for me
it's
also.
portrayed differently, or the average alcoholic in movies is portrayed as that drunk down under the river or under the overpass with the brown bag in their hand and the bottle,
Yeah.
in tethered clothing. And that's just not the case. It's not the case. I mean, statistically, 80-something% of everybody in America, right? That's let's just say 4 out of 5 either are suffering with addiction themselves or they know somebody else that is. And that's what I find hard to believe with people who stay very private about their recovery. I respect that decision. It's totally one for each person to make. At the same time, I didn't know there was a thing called recovery. I was acting my addiction for 15 years and I watched those shows with meetings. I heard, the first time when I actually was arrested, went to jail, and I found out about recovery inside of a jail cell at meetings that were in there, I remember thinking to myself, what do you mean? I don't have to live this way? I don't have to have a substance every 20 minutes? And at that point, I was addicted to 13 or 14 different things. If I needed to eat, it was smoke a joint. If I needed to relax, it was take, a benzo. If I needed to get a project done, it was take some type of a stimulant. I mean, I was managing my entire emotional scale with drugs and alcohol, which kind of leads me to the next thing here. It makes it hard in recovery because we all of a sudden are sober. We don't have that solution anymore. And I always say this is a sober disease. The drugs and the alcohol, for anyone listening, those are just a side effect and something we do to cover up the actual problems that are going on inside. And some of that we'll talk about. But what's been the hardest part of the recovery process for you so far?
To be honest, I can answer that quickly, and that's feeling all the feels. I know that, you had heard me talk about that a lot in our group, is I had no idea that I was numbing myself so much from the good, from the bad, and everything in between. I truly didn't realize that I was doing that. And then, while I was in treatment, that was one thing. Getting out of treatment and feeling all the real feels, the real world feels, that was some rough shit. That was
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah.
And at that point, I will forever be grateful for our outpatient, that I had people that I could talk to and learn that, it was okay to feel these feelings. It's okay to, as you know, my motto in life is sit with it. That's my new one, right? I need to sit with my feelings. I need to learn to name that feeling, because there's a whole lot of feelings that I apparently didn't know how to
Yeah.
name. And
That's
so
why,
I was like,
there's an
what the
emotional
hell is
wheel,
this? Okay, I
right?
better smoke something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That was our
Yeah.
solution for all of them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so I mean, it sounds like you have a pretty good conviction, but you do feel that treatment and having some type of a plan laid out for you by experts, that was,
That
I
worked
mean,
for me.
do you think you could have done it without that?
I do not. I truly don't. Could I have given it a shot? Do I think it would have lasted a long time? No. No, I do not. Because
Yeah. No.
the tips and tricks and the just advice and suggestions that you're given during treatment, are all of them going to work for me? Absolutely not. Is everything I hear from people in meetings going to work for me? Absolutely not. But so I'm picking, right? I'm picking, you know what? That has my name all over it. And that has worked. Since I've gotten out of treatment, I made myself a binder of all the handouts and all the notes that I took. And I'm not usually a really organized person, but I felt the need to do it for this. And there's been twice to when I was having a moment, and it was a big fucking moment. And I pulled that book out and I found something that I learned in treatment that worked for me right at that moment, that kept me sober for another 24 hours or another 5 minutes, right? However long. And so that's what I have found. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that, I wouldn't have known these tools to use that could get me through that one craving at that moment.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that, it's not that we can't do this alone, or it is that we can do it alone, and we don't have to.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
that
thing. Yeah. We don't have to.
today,
We learn so much from
today,
everybody.
we're right. And, when I got sober for the first time many years ago, I don't know if getting sober was a cool thing. It's becoming more of a cool thing now,
Yes.
right? It's becoming more of a thing where it's like we're watching people in the news, and certain people that have had their life completely destroyed by drugs or alcohol, right? They're in the public eye, and there's no way to hide that because you've got all the tabloids and the paparazzi and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, again, talking about stigma, in marketing and with TV and with even these types of situations with anybody who's in that more public type figure place, there's no hiding it. It's not like you can hide these photos and moments for them. They're really on the radar, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
was there a specific moment for you? You seem to have really be fire about recovery. You're very excited about it.
I
You're
am.
doing all the right things. You checked into treatment on your own accord. Like, that's a decision we all have to make for ourselves, of course. But how cool is it that we get to go somewhere for a month or two, right? And take a break from our life in a way to really dive deep and work on ourselves. Like, figure out, why is it I'm using these things that are tearing my life apart when there's other ways to cope that are better? If someone's watching this and you're struggling, one of the things I would say to you is that you do not have to do that anymore. You
No.
don't. And I had to get to a spot multiple times where I didn't want that so badly that I was willing to do whatever it took, whether that was checking into a treatment program or, working with mentors and things like that in recovery, where I could tell them everything that was on my mind. And I know I was talking to somebody that could relate to me. Was there a specific moment in your recovery where you had a breakthrough, like an aha moment of like, wow, this is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
What was that?
I can tell you it was with my therapist in recovery, right? So I had my therapist outside, and then I had my therapist in recovery. And he had, because I couldn't bring myself to say that I was an alcoholic. I couldn't bring myself to say that I was an addict, right?
Right.
I just, I think I have told you previously that I went into recovery with the thought process, I'm going to learn to have a healthy relationship with alcohol. That was my thought.
I remember you saying that phrase a couple times in conversations, and I love that. It's like, for me, I want to have a healthy relationship with methamphetamine and stimulants. And, like I could literally say that and believe it. And that's part of this disease,
Time.
right?
Yeah,
Crazy thoughts like that
absolutely.
are part
It
of it.
made
And then
complete sense.
anybody who's not in that spectrum or doesn't have this addiction problem, they would hear something like that and go, what did you just say?
Yeah, right.
Or they might be able to have a healthy relationship with alcohol. But to me, I never drank because I was thirsty. I'll see people in restaurants have a glass of wine with their dinner or, drink a beer or whatever. And that's where they stop. There was only one reason that I would go and take something in my body like an alcohol or a drug, and that was to feel different,
Yeah.
right?
It was all about the feeling, not the
Yeah,
taste.
absolutely. So,
Yeah. But what was I just tell about my moment, right?
yeah, right, right.
Was
Yeah,
was
your
when
moment
my
of kind of
therapist
that.
asked me he said, what I would like you to do is in the big book is I want you to read from this page to this page. And then if if you have nothing in common, if you cannot relate to anything in this book, you and I will have a completely different conversation. It was as easy
Right,
as that.
right.
And I read said book. And as I'm reading said book, also I find myself wanting to find a highlighter. And as
Yeah.
I'm highlighting things, fuck you. Fuck you. That's all I kept saying to my therapist because this book was speaking to, I was reading myself and that was when I went, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I have an addiction problem. I need help and I need my people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good.
It was a big moment.
It's interesting. Those breakthroughs for us have to be self-generated. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
the disease that has so much misunderstanding behind it. I remember thinking when I was acting my addiction and I didn't get a lot of support from the loved ones I'd hurt for obvious reasons. I'd hurt the people I loved and that loved me. And they were the ones naturally I would want to go back to say, hey, help me get out of this. I just want, and while for a long time I didn't feel like that was appropriate and hell, I'm not getting the right support. The reality is, I can never put my recovery on somebody else, number one. But the things that we do, right? The things we do that tear down the relationships and put us in those positions are absolutely horrible. I think that's why people question, you know, are people who are addicted to something, and that could be food, that could be porn, that could be a substance. I mean, addiction's addiction no matter what it is. Some people are
Yeah.
addicted to shopping, whatever it is. Um, you know, people might look at that and go, well, are these just bad people? Right? My experience has been that, and this was from the first day I got sober, and I was actually in jail when I figured out that all the men I was in jail with, and this was years and years ago, they were 85% of them were in those jail cells either due to something they did while under the influence or for selling drugs or getting involved in that side of things or affiliations they had because of it. And most of us are all sober in jail. It's a little harder to not be sober in jail. I met some of the coolest men ever, right? That kind of bound together and were getting through a hard time. And, they would call it God's hospital, right?
Mm.
You're isolated from the whole world and really have to take a look at yourself. And while I'm not a big proponent for locking up people with addiction, I think it's a lot smarter to send them to treatment, obviously.
Yeah.
So it seems to work. It's not like a jail cell is going to keep you sober. But I guess the point I'm saying is, your spouse can't keep you sober. The fact that you love your kids is not going to keep you sober. The fact that you don't want to lose this career and this, these years of life you put into something, that's not going to keep someone sober, right? It has to come from within and kind of be an internal decision of whether it's like, hey, my body doesn't handle this anymore, or it's, I'm tired of having, for me, it was the chaos got so bad that it was very obvious that I'm not the type of person that can, you know, just um, use stimulants like a gentleman on the weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
There
that
was
guy.
no ladylike using for me either.
Yeah, I
That is
remember I would
something
host
that I
these
had to
parties.
come to terms.
Yeah, I would host these parties in my home, 10 years ago, or whatever. And they were just crazy. And I would supply all these substances for people too. It was insane. And I remember I'd have friends who would do like a line of Coke, right? And then they were ready to leave the party a couple hours later. And I'm like the last one standing going, hey, why are we all going to bed? Like I can get more stuff. You know what I mean? It's just that this thought process is it's always about more. It's always about
More,
more.
more,
So
more,
I'll
more.
watch.
When towards the end of mine, when I was getting some Coke, and I had some friends who, oh, it's my birthday, maybe I will get some, and I'm all, oh, sure, right. So I got some for 4 of them, and the same amount for me. That was right. And so in that evening, those 4 used that and still had some left. I did not.
Right, right. And then you're trying to figure out how can I get some of the stuff I gave them.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's the insane thinking is crazy. So if you could speak to your past self, right? And I know that I've got a question I'll ask you more towards the end about some things here about going back, but if you could speak to your past self, what would you say? what would you say to that person that's trapped in the addiction, that doesn't realize what it's doing, that's losing all these years of her life? Like, what would you tell that person if you could go back?
I would tell her that's a good question. I think I would tell her to just to sit with herself, to take a moment, if you can, without anything, and get to know yourself, get to know her. Because, I would say in my sobriety, that's one of the greatest things that I have had happen, is getting to know this person. And she's pretty all right. I like her. And I couldn't say that previously, really.
Sure.
So that would be
Right.
the thing, is just get to know you without that.
It's amazing how much we don't like ourselves. And, I
And
remember,
without realizing it.
right. I mean, there was times I really, especially after relapsing with a head full of recovery and being sober for multiple years and going back out, like there was times when I was literally doing a substance and I was in tears and I could barely get this substance in my body, right? Because it's wet on the counter or whatever. And those are my tears in there. And I'm still trying to figure out how to get it in my system. It's such a hopeless, you know, first of all, yeah. So do you think recovery is giving you some type of unique perspective or a strength that you didn't have before? Do you see recovery as like a superpower, or do you see it?
Yes,
Yeah. So do I.
absolutely. There is no question that I see that as a superpower. You were talking earlier about the stigma, and now that, people are able to recover loudly now, right? That's a thing. You can buy shirts, sober AF. You can buy shirts, recovering loudly. I love that. And that is, when I went to go into treatment, I didn't keep it a secret. I let everybody that I knew that was close to me, right? Everybody knew, because I believe part of it was I wanted to hold myself accountable. That was a big thing. Um, and since I've been out, I don't really keep it a secret. I mean, do I walk up to strangers and say, "Hi, I'm Suzanne. I'm an alcoholic and addict"? No, I don't do that. However, when I was going out and to the ice cream shop to celebrate my 60 days of sobriety, hi, yep, I'm here celebrating 60 days of sobriety. I don't have a problem with that. I truly believe in celebrating my sobriety. It's crazy. The word celebration used to be formed around alcohol and drugs. I didn't know how to celebrate otherwise, and now I'm learning there's other ways to celebrate things. But so, no, I'm all about recovering loudly. I will yell it from the rooftops if it's appropriate.
So yeah, I mean, it's something to be proud of for sure. And I'm definitely one of the believers. I got a 10-year successful career out of telling people that I was in recovery and being vulnerable. And I think a lot of people are scared of that, right? A lot of people think, well, who's going to judge me? And look, there is a stigma around it. So if I'm in certain fields for my career and people know I have a problem like this, could it hurt me? Absolutely. And that's unfortunate. I think that prevents people from getting recovery. I think that when people are sent to jail or prison over this disease versus giving a chance at treatment, I think it really makes people are afraid to go get help, right? I know, people who have lost their kids over going and getting help, and it's sad. It's sad that that's the way the things are. So
Yeah.
how do you see your future now that you're on this path? What do you think it's going to look like for you now that you have gotten sober, you've got a solution, you're working a program, doing all the right things? What's your future look like?
My future, my future's so bright. I got to wear shades, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah, well
but
said.
that's how I feel one of the two best compliments that I've gotten, and I constantly get them since I've gotten clean, is my friends, who I didn't realize that would get emotional there. My friends saying, "We're so glad to have Suze back. We're so glad to have you back," right? Because she was gone. She was lost for a while.
Yeah,
And the other one
feels like
is that I look brighter. And that comes from a few people who didn't even know anything about me getting sober, right?
yeah.
Or getting clean, is, wow, I don't know what's going on, but you just look brighter. And so I just feel that the world is my oyster right now. Whatever I want to happen, I can make happen, and I will, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. it could happen. I don't have any exact set plans right now, but I just know that I want to share my sobriety and I want to share my happiness with everybody.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're definitely right on that point. And, again, super proud of you, super grateful to know you and to know you're willing to fight the good fight as we talk about, because, for every one of us that finds recovery, there's 100 other people out there that don't know they can get sober, don't know if it's possible, are afraid to do that, will never even have that thought process. And maybe they don't burn their lives to the ground, but, whether you burn your life to the ground or you're somebody who you consider a functioning, addict or alcoholic, it's still the same hell, you
It
know?
is hell, right?
The
So I was
consequences get worse,
starting
but
to
yeah,
spiral, right? I hadn't spiraled down, but my world was starting to spiral. I would say I was probably on like maybe the second to the third ring, on that spiral downwards. But again, it still wasn't me, right? I was not the person that people knew 5 years ago or whatever it was, right? Because just slowly, everything got worse.
yeah, it does. So if somebody's watching this podcast or a video clip out of it or whatnot, and they want to help a loved one who struggle with addiction, because again, 4 to 5 people, they know somebody. If it's not
Yeah.
themselves, somebody close to them that they love. And I think for people that may not understand this disease, it's sad to watch. It's frustrating. You feel like they're doing it to you. You might feel like it's hopeless, watching a loved one die and kill themselves with alcohol or something else. I mean, what would you say if they wanted to help a loved one with their addiction? What would you advise them to do?
My best advice would be to talk to them and talk to them out of love. Don't talk at them, right? The minute somebody talks at you or comes at you, whatever, that's when the defense goes up. That's when they're no longer listening to anything that somebody's saying to them. I was there. I understood that. But when my therapist talked to me, came to me out of a place of love and just talked to me, right? You know what? She left it up to me. You may want to consider this. And if, if that person can have any sort of, that little bit of sober or common sense, whatever it is, that's going to hear that part, let them come to it on their own terms. Hopefully they will. Right. But again, that's my best advice is to talk to them, not at them.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the consequences of being active in your addiction, those are painful enough. The sad thing about my personal story was I knew I was hurting the people I loved. I knew that I was not being present. I knew that I was destroying things that would take a lot of time to build back if they ever could be. I knew that, but I couldn't stop. And that's the hell that we talk about being trapped in, is knowing that you can't, whether it's physical, meaning if you stop drinking, you're going to have seizures and need to go to the hospital, or whether it's, a mental thing, which a lot of it is. It's not like you're aware of all the things you're doing when you're doing them at all. But for me, especially during my relapses, it was like shutting it off, getting sober, realizing what I'd done, shame, guilt, horror, fear, all of it coming back. And then this cycle just repeating over and over, right? Because I didn't want to feel those things. Like you talked about earlier, we don't want to feel the feelings. So, well, one of the things this show is all about, Suze, is the title says it best. I mean, let's do more. I believe we can do more, right? Whether it's with our mindset, with addiction, with, entrepreneurship, whatever you're involved in, your community, there's always something more we can do. And I didn't title the show this way because let's do more was like, hey, I know you're exhausted. Let's go do more. Let's go do more. It's been a 15-hour day. It's more about the concept of like, we can do a little bit extra to make these things a little bit better for our world and our community. So what are a couple things that we could all do more of to help someone suffering in their addiction? I heard one of them, which one of them is talk to them like a person, talk to them out of love, let them know that you care, right? Let them know that they're worth living and that you want to help them when they're ready, right? But what's another takeaway the audience can take from you on how can we help someone else suffering in their addiction?
Gosh. Help me along here, Chris.
Well, I mean, I think what we're doing right now is a big one,
Yeah.
right? For
Just
anyone listening
sharing,
to this,
right?
sharing about it,
Sharing
yeah,
our sobriety,
right,
right? Just
right,
sharing that. I was going through a coffee shop, the drive through, and the car in front of me had sober AF, recovering loudly stickers on the car.
Nice.
Right. So then I stuck my head out. You're going, hey, I'm stuck too. Right. And then, so then the person at the window thought I was, yelling at that person in front. And she
Yeah.
was like, no, 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 we were just being sober AF together. And so I got up there and my coffee had been purchased for me. How beautiful, right? I mean, it's just, I think if we can, the more we can reach out, the more that we can get the word out that, hey, I'm here for you. If you need me, if you want to text
Yeah.
me, if you want to call me, whatever, hey, I'll meet you for coffee. Coffee is a new thing for me since sobriety. I never drank coffee and
I
now
know it's crazy. I remember you saying that. That's
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
I
right.
mean,
I
it's not
can't
insane.
imagine.
But there's other things we've done that are more insane than not
Yeah,
drinking
it's true.
coffee. But I was amazed to hear that. Cool. A couple last minute questions and closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up here. Where do you draw strength from on the hard days? Because getting sober is not easy. There's I think a misconception there that I just go to treatment, I come out, and I can now, like you said, manage my alcoholism. I can drink one drink and stop, or they're going to fix me in treatment. The reality is this disease is with us for the rest of our life. Like a cancer patient always has to worry and probably not go smoke cigarettes, or they could risk that cancer coming back. We have to have tools, right? We have to do things daily
Tools.
to.
It's all about the tools.
So what do you do on your dark days? Where do you get the strength from? How do you get through them?
On my dark days, I reach out to those I love. I reach out to my other friends in sobriety. I say, this is what's going on in my head. I have a sponsor. I also reached out to my sponsor. I pull out my tool book, from my recovery, and I can look through there and see what tool it is that may work for me at that moment. Music is very powerful to me, right? There's so many songs out there about recovery, about sobriety, that I hear and it's like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's what I'm going through right at this moment, And then also, if I can just get through that moment at that time, it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I know I'm going to be okay, right? Just get me through this moment. And sometimes, music or loved ones or my higher power, whatever that is, right? I'm still learning that part of it. But I do know that there was, I had come across some drugs after my sobriety, and I had some that have been hidden away, and I didn't know what to do, right? And I sat them. I couldn't throw them away. I couldn't get rid of them, but I didn't want to
Craziness came
use
back.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so I just sat there staring at them for the longest time. But then I just remember to the universe is help me do the right thing. Just help me do the right thing. That's all I kept saying. And then all of a sudden there was no thought of, okay, now you're going to stand up. Now you're going to, no, I just stood up. I grabbed it and they went into the toilet.
Right.
That was
Right.
a
It was
huge,
like a funeral, right? It was like a funeral.
yeah, it was. It was. And I taped it, right? I taped it so I could watch it again, so I could see my emotion. I wanted to watch myself do this so I could look back on that when I was having another moment. And I have. I
Yeah.
have looked back on that.
No, it's smart. I mean, you're doing a lot of the right things. And I think one day you'll look back at that video, as I will look back at many videos I've got. Some of them are not the most comfortable moments, Who knows? There could be other videos that may float around, doesn't really matter. But, I think it's cool when we can look back when we're so far along in our recovery, we can look back and go, man, I never want to go there again. I never want to go there again.
I've looked back at videos already that say I had on my phone, and that I think I'm just talking to somebody, right? I can tell that I'm wasted, but
Yeah.
I
It
didn't
doesn't
think
look
I
so
came across as
cool. It doesn't.
wasted.
I think a couple things you mentioned there I want to point out too is like, how cool is it that you have that drive-through experience? Because again, getting sober we live in an age now where there's a huge recovery community. There's more and more people every day trying to get sober. There's more and more resources than ever before. Who knows how many
Never
thousands of
before.
treatment centers there are? It doesn't matter what city you're in. There's something close by where you can get some help. And and then of course that's on top of all the free programs that are out there. But it's cool that we're in a place and a day and age where this is no longer so much looked at as like this thing I have to hide that I had a problem. In fact, my experience is those of us that talk about having the problem and recovering from it tends to inspire a lot of people. It tends to make people, think about their own personal choices. I have a group that I go to, and there's a young lady in there that is a nurse, and isn't necessarily one of us, stumbled into the meetings on accident, into this little group that we do. And it's been so cool to watch her journey, because as she sat and listened to those of us sharing ours, she realized, yeah, there's some things I got to change that maybe I wasn't looking at, that are, stepping over that ledge of addiction. So
The same thing. I've had people reach out to me and say, Suze, just you've inspired me to, look at this a little deeper, just watching you, I've decided to, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful
it's,
thing.
it's such a beautiful thing. And I think, again, it takes ultimate bravery to go out and to be outspoken about your disease, and even outspoken about the things that you did, right? I'm going to be talking about things on this podcast I probably, a part of me would never want people to know. However, I think vulnerability is king. I think that if someone were to ever use that
Absolutely.
information against me, then it's like, you're going to look like a pretty big shitbag for doing so.
But
But
that's okay,
it is okay.
because you're not that shitbag anymore, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point of, while I was in recovery, I read a book about vulnerability, because I wanted to, I don't know, just to me, that's a big part of my journey, of my sobriety, is being vulnerable, is, I mean, I have a lot of stories also that, especially back in, I would say more, well, there's quite a few about the drinking, but I would say more stories about the meth and the cocaine use, right? That are like, but again, that's what got me here. Those stories are what got me to treatment, that I can now look back at them. Sober Suze can look back at them and go, yeah, that wasn't a good one.
Yeah. 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 At the time, it's
At the
interesting.
time, it was just funny.
Yeah, we think, oh, this is just the way I live. This is normal. There's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah.
It turns out the rest of our neighbors probably aren't, doing a line and looking out the corners of their garage to make sure no one's following them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
right.
it's not a normal way to live, but
Yeah, yeah.
recovery.
I was, everybody, I just assumed everybody else was taking their garbage
Yeah,
out 3 or 4 times a night, because they had to check to make sure the FBI wasn't across the way. But
I
hey,
know it's insane. I go there too when I go out, and it's sad. It's a horrible place to be. So a couple
here
last
we are
questions I
now.
want to ask you. Here we are now. Here we are now, right? And
Here
that's
we
the
are
goal. Is
now.
we get to focus on being present
We
today.
get to
A
focus.
lot of us
That's right.
talk about all we have is today when it comes to sobriety and recovery. And that concept, I think, is very true. And it's also a very great way to think, because when I get too caught up in the past, or I get too caught up in the future, I step into fear. And for me, fear is either I'm not going to get something I wanted, or I'm going to lose something that I have. My definition of fear is false evidence appearing real, because that's really what it is. It's false evidence. And as a person in recovery, this disease will tell you all kinds of horrible things about yourself and about other people. And if you do not have some type of a replacement for, your addiction, then you can actually be not a great person in recovery, right? You can be what a lot of people compare it to as like a dry drunk, or, we have to plug in
Dry
with some kind of
sober. Isn't that
replacement.
what they call dry
Yeah.
sobriety?
Yeah. And some people do that, and the white knuckling, and it's hard. It's hard. It's a lot harder than it needs to be. So, quick question, a couple last minute closing thoughts here. Do you regret your decision to get sober? Do you have any regrets about
Absolutely
getting
not.
sober?
Absolutely not. I would, again, I had no idea it would take me to where I am right now, feeling the way I feel, opening my eyes the way it has, opening my heart the way it has. I honestly had no idea life could feel like this. Again, I'm feeling the feels, and I'm loving it.
It's a cool place to be. While it's hard for us to deal with emotional states and to recognize emotions, and, you know, like I shared earlier, I was using a substance every 20 minutes to control my mood and my emotions. I didn't want to feel something, or I wanted to feel a certain way, and I wanted it now, damn it, because we are instant gratification junkies, right?
That's right.
And we're
That's right.
still that
I
way,
ate a salad. Have I not lost 5 pounds already?
right? And we're that way when we get sober, right? Um, we still have those things, but now we have tools and systems available to us, and coping mechanisms where we don't have to let that take us down the same path, or we're able to have self-reflection really quickly, and realize. And, one of the things I try to focus on daily in my recovery, which was taught to me by some great mentors, is to really look at what you didn't do right during the day as well. Like, do an inventory, right? Do an inventory of, who did I talk to? Who did I lie to? Did I overstep today? Did I make anybody feel a way that I wouldn't want someone to make me feel? and to go back and correct that as soon as possible. I think that's the beauty of recovery, is that we get to do things like that and not hold on to a grudge for 10 years, right? And, live a horrible life of anger and frustration over something that happened to us that long ago. How
Yeah.
do you feel about, so we talked about your story of addiction and your story of recovery. Got kind of a good picture of that. I mean, how do you feel about that whole story now, right? Going from addiction and we're talking decades for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And some decades worse than others, but just a consistent, always having to have something.
Something.
How do you feel about that story now? Are you sad that happened in your life? Would you take it back? Would you take it back? Would you go back to your younger self and say, hey, don't do drugs and alcohol or you're going to ruin your life? Or would you let things happen the way they have because it's led you to the spot you're in now and it couldn't have happened any other way?
Yeah, the latter. Absolutely. I can't imagine, as good as I feel today, right now, how I feel about myself, the pride I have in myself for being sober, for getting through this, for doing this on a daily, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day basis. I can truly, honestly say I would not change a thing.
That's cool. It's a cool place to be.
I wouldn't.
Cool place to be,
It
no
really is.
regrets, right? Living a life with no
No,
regrets is cool.
no
I
regrets.
think when you look at challenges, and I'm going to talk a lot about this on the show with a lot of different people, but when you look at challenges and obstacles in life and those dark moments that we've had to get through, you know, there's two ways to do it. You can go through it and let it make you become bitter. You can go through it and let it become to make you better. And even in those moments, you can look for that silver lining and try to figure out what is good about this. What am I supposed to learn from this? Right?
Yeah. Like I don't harbor any negative feelings for the first person that came to me and showed me a pipe with little rocks in it, right? I don't harbor feelings against the person who first introduced me, to each one of the drugs. There is no, again, it was my choice to take them and then not knowing at the time, right, to where those would lead me. But again, I've had some fucked up moments in my life. I've had some beautiful moments in my life, but right now, I wouldn't change a thing to what I feel right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool feeling. It's the ultimate, it really is the ultimate achievement. It's no matter what
Yes.
successes and things I've had in my life, or the cool things I've done, or the horrible things I've done or been, have happened to me, whatever. I don't think there'll ever be anything that's more of a height in my life than getting the freedom from substances,
Right.
right?
That's
It's
why I got my Phoenix tattoo, right? You watched me fall. Now you can watch me rise.
out of the ashes. I was talking about this last night, and we'll wrap up here. With a friend that I'm trying to help out, and I was talking to him about that exact thing, and he was kind of not complaining about being in the fire, but like, I don't think there's ever going to be a chance where I don't think I get out of this, right? And I explained that exact analogy to him. It's funny you brought that up. That the Phoenix Rising is a beautiful thing, and the whole concept, right? The theory of it is an amazing thing to think about. But the Phoenix can't rise unless it was burnt up to ashes.
Right.
Right. There's nothing to
Sure.
rise out of the ashes. And it's not that we put ourselves through that fire intentionally. Things unfold the way they unfold. And I think everything in life happens for a reason. And that reason, suits our best purpose. As long as we are looking for that silver lining, I think it's a big thing you got to remember is, we
Do have to
have,
look for.
that's the only place to find hope from. And I've been in some dark moments in my life. And I know you have too. People listening may be going through some hard things right now. But when you look for the silver lining, when you write that gratitude list on the day that you hate everything and everybody, and there's nothing to be grateful for, and you're down and out, and you're writing a list like, I'm grateful that I have eyes that see. I'm grateful I have a toothbrush. You're looking around the room looking for things to be grateful for, right? I've been there. But that's really what starts your journey into being able to see what good can come out of a bad thing, and for the
It's
most
true.
part, there's usually something that can, so. Well, awesome, Suze. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on the show here and, spread the
My
good word
pleasure.
and being vulnerable. Thanks so much. I learned a lot from you, and I'm really grateful to have you as a friend. And, for anybody, like I said, that's listening to this, that's struggling, please reach out. We will have a whole team
Please.
here eventually that's staffed to help out and get people in places where they need to be, provide resources and help and all of that. But at a minimum, If you know somebody's struggling or you're struggling yourself, go to one of our social media channels and drop a message. Those are looked at and they will always be answered. And, share these podcasts, get the word out there about recovery. And as we share more recovery stories, we share more stories of perseverance in life's hardest moments, let's spread that around. Let's do more in a way where we can impact others, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and one person at a time kind of help to change the world at large and to better our communities. It's really up to each one of us. There's no one person that's going to come in and save. There's no one person that's going to come in and have that magic silver bullet, that cures this disease or any other for that matter. But if we team up and we are together on this and we are sharing what works, we definitely can save lives that way. So again, Suze, it was great having you on the show. Look forward to connecting with you again soon. Yeah, thanks so much.
Let's do more.
There you go. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for today's episode of Let's Do More. I hope you found inspiration, hope, and some powerful takeaways to help you on your own journey of growth and resilience. Remember, no matter what you're facing, you have the strength to overcome it and the power to create positive change in your life and community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, download, and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected and be part of the Let's Do More community. You can find us on Facebook at Let's Do More Podcast, Instagram and TikTok at Let's Do More.life, X at Let's Do More Life, and our primary channel is on YouTube at Let's Do More. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your stories, or let us know what topics you would like to hear about next. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, remember, let's keep pushing forward, inspiring each other, and doing more for ourselves and the world around us. Take care, and I'll see you on the next show.